Okay, welcome to the Amijo show. My name is Jo Baldwin-Trott, and everyone on my show is an ami of mine, a friend of mine, or within my circle. So I'm really thrilled to have someone who I've only just met, but when you meet Gethin, you feel like you've known him forever. I bet everyone says that about you. But
Yeah.
hi, Gethin.
Hi, how you doing, Joe? Lovely to see you.
You too. Yeah, thanks for coming on the show today. And we're streaming live, as I understand, to Facebook, which is really exciting. And I'm really thrilled to have you on the show for a gazillion reasons. One of which is our new book, which actually I haven't got to hand, which is shameful of me. But our new book,
I'll be
Silver.
here.
It's not this one. This is
No,
Gethin isn't in this book, but he'll be in my next book. But you're in the book Silver Linings, which is a lovely book of positive stories from lockdown. And so we have only just met, but I do feel like I've known you a long time. Do people say that to you?
I've got a bit of an inviting character. Also, people say as well they just feel that they can just tell me anything, and they usually do. It's people who end up telling me stuff that they'd never really tell anybody else. But,
I better remind myself that I'm live on Facebook then, because I could be declaring all and sundry.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to give a slight intro to you, because you obviously live on the beautiful coast down in Portsmouth, and but I must admit, it occurred to me literally as I was posting earlier, Gethin, that we could have met in a few years ago when you would have been on one side of the fence and I would have been on the other.
Yes. Yes.
That just made me chuckle a lot. So tell us about who you are, because I prefer you to give your intro than me, really.
Okay, so my name's Gethin Jones from Unlocking Potential. I'm an inspirational speaker, trainer and coach, but I mainly work within prisons, charities and local authorities. But the bulk of my work is within prisons. And what I try to do is I break down the them and us narrative. So I do work and development with prison officers about how they can create more meaningful relationship with the men, women or children in their care to support rehabilitation. And then I also do stuff with the residents, so the people that are serving sentences, about how they can start to trust a system that they fundamentally mistrust. So that's what I do in a nutshell. And I'm actually in my padded cell now, because when I'm not working, they put me in a padded cell to keep me safe.
Safe from yourself.
Safe from myself, yes.
Oh, fantastic! Your work is amazing, and obviously, just through lockdown, you have created this incredible content for residents, as you call them, of prison, and obviously, you know a fair bit about being in prison, because obviously we could have met, because I could have nicked you, actually. That's basically the bottom line. When I was in uniform as a WPC 2684. You never know, our paths may have crossed, but you sadly went into prison. You had a phenomenally tough time when you were growing up, so to speak. Not that you should ever grow up, by the way. Don't ever grow up. It's a bad idea. No. But tell us about your story, Gethin, because you had a bit of a tough start.
Yeah, so it's how I kind of explain it is I always say that I was like born into the system. Yeah, and what I mean by that was social services were there from the day I was born. So my mum came through the care system and didn't have the best of times herself growing up. And my mum was a single parent with 4 children, alcoholic father, just all of that kind of stuff. And and what happened was I first went into the care system when I was about 3 years of age. I went into foster care. I came back home, and then my mum had a nervous breakdown when I was about 5, and I went back into care again. And then sort of like stuff just kind of happened in my childhood that got to the point of like when I was like 10 and 11 years of age, and I was just like petty shoplifting, and people like yourselves are chasing me about trying to stop me doing things. But I just kind of like my life became a bit like a survival. I was just trying to survive in a world that I didn't truly understand. But it just kind of took a real turn of events then. So I went into full-time care at the age of 11. I got my first criminal conviction when I was 11 years of age. I got expelled from school at the age of 13. I got my first custodial prison sentence at the age of 14, and also I was a 14-year-old child then, and that was back in the old days when they had a thing called detention centres, which was short, sharp shock. and it was just about fear, intimidation, violence. It was just a really, really scary place to be. And I don't think I ever realised just how young I was until my own son turned 14, and that's when I realised I was a 14-year-old child. Just being put into an adult world. So you talked about your number as a police officer. Then I was like M33681 Jones, sir. Yeah, that's who I was. But that experience kind of like it kind of catapulted my life. I kind of left there with a feeling that said, like, you know, that I was never going to trust another living soul. The only person I could depend upon was me, and I was no longer going to play the game. Yeah. So my life just kind of went massively downhill from that point. I was in secure units at 14, secure units at 15. I got my second custodial sentence at the age of 15. I ended up spending 8 years of my life behind a prison wall. I developed a dependency on heroin. I spent time on the streets in homeless hostels, and I destroyed every relationship that came my way. It wasn't that people didn't want to love or care for me. I was just incapable of maintaining any kind of relationship. I always say I was a little bit like a hedgehog. Yeah? They look really, really cute, but if you pick them up, they're just going to hurt you. And that's what I did. I just hurt every single person that came into my life. You know, and so I was just like a walking disaster up until the age of 35, when all of a sudden things started to shift and change a bit.
So you were in and out of prison until what time?
So I first went into custody when I was 14, and then I was in and out of prison up until the age of 35. You know, so it's in 1985 when I first went away. So it was a I can't even do the maths now. 85, 95, 2005. Yeah, so it was a 20-year journey within the criminal justice system. You know, so and then like I say, I was already involved with it before. You know, I knew more about the courts and solicitors and social workers and everything else. You know, everybody else was at school. School just had no meaning for me. It was, like I said, it was just about me being able to survive on a day-to-day basis, you know, and and with no real kind of direction. You know, I never saw anybody have a job, or never saw anybody kind of be trained to be a solicitor or a probation officer or an accountant. You know, it's just, I was just in a completely different world.
And that's the problem, isn't it? It's just a horrid loop of perpetuation. And you know, I remember arresting boys that would actually say, you know, we just want to get back inside because we get fed 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And so it just becomes part of the norm, which is actually the whole fault of the system, isn't it?
Yeah. I've so like you say, I've got some real good friends now that are prison governors, you know, working there. And I was speaking with one governor once, and he had it bang on. He said to me, he said, Geff, he said, if somebody goes to prison once or twice, yeah, then actually they need to take ownership and responsibility for their behaviours. He said, but if they're coming back a third, a fourth, a fifth or sixth time, then we need to actually look at what we're doing and ask ourselves, is there more that we should be doing, and are we doing something wrong? And that's pretty much about what it is that I kind of do now. And I really try to sort of like get people to open their awareness and mindset. So many people believe that people go to prison to be punished, yeah, okay, but they don't go to prison to be punished. They go to prison to be rehabilitated, yeah. So the punishment is the loss of liberty, yeah, and prison should solely be about rehabilitation and education. And sadly, yeah, we got a system where that rarely happens, you know. So if I looked at, say, like, if you just, I'm not going to put a number on it, but if you say had 100% of a budget, okay, probably about 80% of that budget is being spent on the infrastructure, yeah, so around salary, wages, food, heat, all that sort of stuff. Probably less than 20% is being spent on rehabilitation, you know, and for me, that's criminal.
It is, absolutely, because it's literally just putting everyone in a pot, isn't it? You're just in the pot forever that time, and you might leave it, but you might come back. And I totally agree. You know, obviously I've been on the other end of where you've been, but I definitely had, when I was in Bristol, there were children that were just in and out. Yeah. But sadly, they did come very much from the background that you have, which is the permanent care. Because if we can go back to that for a little bit, because you know, I've dealt with those homes, and I dealt with, you know, the children and the things that went on in those care homes. So tell us what you think about that, going back a step, if you don't mind.
So children's homes, it was funny actually, because the mad thing about it, yeah, this might sound a little bit mad to people on the show, but I actually started to beg social services to put me into care. Yeah, so what happened was when I was about 9 or 10, my brother got taken into full-time care, and my brother was the only person I felt like I really connected with within my family. And then when I did see my brother, he kind of like had nicer clothes on. He just kind of looked well and everything like that. And I started to believe actually, like, you know, that children's homes were my answer. You know, so I wanted to go into care, and I probably escalated my behaviour to get myself put into the children's homes. But what happened was when I got to the children's homes, I very quickly found, yeah, that it wasn't that sort of like saving grace. Also as well, and I understand the decision, but at the time my brother was very, very settled. I was very unsettled. So they made the decision not to kind of put us together. Yeah, so even though I wanted to be my brother, I wasn't with my brother. But also as well, they didn't facilitate the relationship. Yeah, so I didn't see my brother again until I was like post 16. And then when I got into the care system, I met a really, really likable chap as well, and we were like two peas in a pod. Mike Sullivan, his name, and me and Mike, he became my new brother. And what it was I'll just give you this is the sort of kids that you had in children's homes there. So Mike's mum died of cancer when he was 8 years of age. Okay, and then social services went to his dad, yeah, to say that you need to take custody of your son. His dad refused and left the country, yeah, and then Mike ended up then being put into the care system. And what happened with me and Mike was we were both in a system that we truly didn't want to be within, but we had nowhere to go, yeah. So I didn't want to go back home because home was so painful. And then so what happened was we started to live life by our own rules, yeah, which meant that we'd consistently run away from the children's homes. But when you're running away from a children's home, you've got nowhere to go. You're then sleeping rough on the streets. Yeah. So me and Mike, we'd go to all towns and cities across the whole of the south of England. And then what we'd be doing is we'd be breaking into cars at night and we'd be stealing money out of the cars. But we'd be using that money to go to the bakers in the morning and buy fresh bread. You know, we then sort of like, because of the environment, we started to experiment with sniffing petrol, sniffing glue, drinking alcohol, smoking cannabis, you know, and then what happened as well is because of the environment within the homes, we started to get lots of messages like we was bad, we was naughty, we was no good. You'd end up becoming a drug addict. You'd end up spending the rest of your life in prison. You know, and these things just predetermined where it was that we was going. You know, it's that thing of like, you know, that when they talk about the self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, is if you're told it enough, yeah, then you start to think it. Maybe I am like this, and then in the end you act it out. You know, so you become everything that they said. You know, and I became a drug addict. I ended up spending a big chunk of my life in and out of prison, as did Mike. You know, and you know, Mike's very massively important within everything I do as well. And I dedicated my book, Unconscious Incarceration, to Mike as well. So me and Mike, first, we graduated from the care system to the prison system at the age of 15. Yeah, so we was in court again, and usually we just get remanded back to the care of the local authority. Hampshire County Council said there was nothing more they could do for us. Yeah, so we got remanded to Winchester Prison when we were children. If I just kind of put that into context as well, so care leavers, they make up 1% of the population of the UK, just 1%. Yeah, they make up 40% of the young person's prison estate, and over 26% of the adult estate. I believe the numbers are higher in the adult estate, but they don't choose to disclose because it's seen as a negative. Okay, whereas with the young person's estate, because there's still a responsibility in relation to the local authorities, they know the exact numbers. And then what happens is, you know, so they put a child into the care system to safeguard them and keep them safe. They then respond negatively in their behaviour because of their trauma. They then punish and criminalise the behaviour and put them into another system. When Mike was 19 years of age in 1990, it was one of the first times we weren't in prison together. And on Valentine's Day, Mike didn't get a card from his partner. And he sadly took his life in Winchester Prison at the age of 19. And it had a huge impact on me. But when I kind of, you know, I'm very self-aware there, and I know what kind of happened to Mike. I know the mindset that he went through because we had lots and lots of chats. And what it was Mike's life was about loss, abandonment, and rejection. Yeah. When he didn't get that card, he felt loss, abandonment, and rejection. When he looked back at his life, all he saw was loss, abandonment, and rejection. When he looked forward, he just saw more of the same. and I believe that's why he chose to take his life. And yeah, so you know, and the thing is, the funny thing is as well, like, you know, there'll be many people here, yeah, that will maybe listening to this and thinking about kids that they went to school with, or people they went to college with and universities with, yeah, and they'll be thinking about sort of like, you know, their accountants, or they got their own businesses, they got all this sort of stuff, yeah. You would not believe how many of my friends are no longer alive. Yeah, you would not believe it. Yeah, if there are very few like me that are doing stuff that I'm doing now, the majority are either dead, in prison, or in mental health hospitals. Yeah, so we have a massively broken system, but nobody seems to prepare to take ownership of, like, we're doing something wrong and we need to change it.
Yeah, and well, without going down that road, because it gets just to go down,
Yeah.
but I just think personally, I think it's term time politics.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
because you know, politicians see themselves as the next one-hit wonder for
Yeah,
4 years, maybe 8, and so therefore there's no longevity, there's no accountability, there's no future thinking. It's, oh well, how can I look after my budget right now, my pot of money right now, and how can I look wondrous and joyful and like a golden boy at the moment. But let's not go down there, because then we'll
no,
start
no,
talking
no,
about
no,
Boris Johnson, and we don't want to do that really, because we don't want to spoil this great conversation.
no, no, no,
But,
no,
but
no.
I agree, and I think we need better politicians that make decisions for longevity and for the bigger picture. Totally on your page. I want to bring you back to something you just mentioned, which just reminded me of, you know, it's that horrible, you know, back to that loop, sort of, you know, that terrible looping of the system, and it just kind of keeps you in it. And so many people, I remember thinking, you know, talking to people about, you know, someone I just dealt with recently, or a court case, and they say, oh well, you know, what's wrong with these kids, or what's wrong with these, and it's actually, the answer is very actually nothing.
No.
What went wrong is that you faced a choice. Your standards and your beliefs what didn't allow you to make the right choice. You made the wrong choice, and therefore you went down a path. But I remember arresting people that were solicitors that had actually made a wrong choice. Well, they made a choice at one point in their lives. They chose to do X, and then that took them down a very fast, because it is a fast, slippery slope downhill, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
To end up being on heroin, stuck, homeless, desperate, committing crime for a habit that they never wanted. You don't start your teenage to think, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a heroin addict. Yay!
Yeah,
For
yeah.
God's sake. So I think firstly, I think that the mindset and the judgment that is attached to, and yes, some criminals, the criminals that really should be in prison, are the people that are going out of their way to commit fraud. Whereas I think, I think there's definitely almost different sort of classifications. And I'm not talking about burglar. I'm not talking about monetary fraud. I'm talking about mindset. That you definitely, for me, I just think it's the most tragic kind of situation that you ended up in because of what led you to be there.
Yeah, and there's a few things there that you kind of said, is I'll just go back first of all to I met a barrister when I was recently working up in Scotland, and he does lots of stuff. So there's a thing called ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences, yeah, and somebody who has more than 3 or 4 ACEs, yeah, is more likely to become a drug addict, alcoholic, spend time in prison, and also have like real severe health issues, mental health issues, and I kind of see that. And he was defending a 14-year-old child in the court, yeah. So it's still happening today, and the judge was adamant that they was going to lock this child up, yeah, and said, that this child needs to feel the full force of the law because this child's come off the rails. And then the barrister sort of like looked at the judge and he said, "I really understand what you're saying, Your Honour." He said, "But what if there were no rails?" And it's the absolute truth. And then I heard another ex-governor, that's and he done this blog, and what he said was that is and I believe it, 80% of people in prison shouldn't be in prison. They should be in some caring, supportive community that's going to help them to understand all of the stuff that's going on for them. But what he said is like, we should actually be locking up people that we're scared of, not people we're mad at. Yeah, and that's what we do. Yeah, we lock up people that we're mad at, you know, and it's just wrong. And when I talk about rehabilitation, you know, is because this is another fact that, you know, so rehabilitation is all of our concern. Yeah, so the truth of the matter is, less than 5% of the prison population will never get out. Yeah, less than 5%. Yeah, so they're all getting out at some point. Yeah, would you rather that they came out with some rehabilitation and education so they can kind of contribute into the local community and society, or would you rather they came out more angry than when they first went in? Because the truth of the matter is, they could move in next door to you. Yeah, whether that's your village, town, city, whatever that is. You know. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's because if you know, especially, and I don't know what the percentage of, but the percentage of prisoners leaving that have done something similar to you, they haven't been able to attend school for many reasons. But actually, the fact that they've not had any education or any skills set forever, you know,
Yeah.
so actually that is for me the issue. And I know some prisons do offer training and entrepreneurship kind of schemes, don't they? But it's not all, is it? There's just nowhere near enough funding in that respect.
No, and there's very small pockets. That's the trouble. It's a bit like when I said earlier about like the bulk of the prison budget is around infrastructure. So there's only a small percentage. And the trouble is as well is a lot of the stuff that's done as well is also done on goodwill. So it's mainly the third sector. You know, and they're doing it for peanuts, you know, and at the end of the day, that's wrong in itself. You know, it's like, you know, what it is I'm not going to get too much into politics, but you've got big, massive corporate companies that are providing the canteen and the food and everything like that, charging huge amounts of money. Yeah, you know, so just as an example, on my canteen sheet, if I want to buy a tin of tuna, yeah, it's going to cost me about £1.20 to £1.30 for a tin of tuna. Yeah, we all know how much a tin of tuna costs. Yeah, so the markup that they're getting is just insane. You know, whereas then you've got people that want to create real good, meaningful rehabilitation programs. You know, every year they're fighting for survival to be able to keep delivering in the prison. You know, and it's yeah, so it's a difficult thing. But I haven't. I should have brought the stats with me. You know, but when you see the stats of people in prison that were expelled from school, who have got no qualifications, people who had drug problems before prison, people that were homeless before prison, people that have suffered sexual abuse in prison. It's just mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing when you really start to break down the facts of who it is that we're locking up in our prisons.
Yeah, and the cost of the economy, and at the other end of the end result,
Yeah.
the cost of policing, of the
Yeah.
criminal justice system, which is wrong anyway. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, in my opinion, I think that CGS needs completely overhauling, and it has done for decades now. But the cost of all of that, and if you weigh that up, I don't know the figures either, but you know, I just know how much that costs, obviously, and you know how much these police forces cost to run, the court systems and everything else. So the investment in that first instance would be so much smaller. It makes no sense. So what are you doing about that, Gethin? What is Mr. Jones doing about that?
So I'm very fortunate. You know, I've created quite a trusted brand within quite a short period of time, really. So I only came up with this idea 4 years ago, and I've been doing it full time for about 3.5 years. Okay, so you know, I've met with Rory Stewart. That's a good friend of mine. I've met him a few times. I've met the new Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland. I've sat down and had conversations with Joe Farah, who's the new CEO of Her Majesty's Prison and Probation Service. I'm also speaking to a lady at the moment that's in charge of the whole redesign of the of probation, because it's just going. They spent a huge amount of money splitting it, and now they're just about to spend a huge amount of money putting it back together. But you know,
Honestly, just crazy.
But what I can't say, so if I just give you an example of what my day can look like, so probably about 18 months, 2 years ago, I was in Wormwood Scrubs in the morning, and I was doing a workshop with about 20 men in that prison, and then in the afternoon, I was at Westminster having a cup of tea on the terrace with Lord Ramsbottom. Yeah. Okay. So I do a lot of diplomacy and communication. I call this a transferable skill. So people always just say to me, "So what kind of prisoner was you then?" I said, "I was a bit like Norman Stanley Fletcher." Yeah, I said, like, and if you look at Norman Stanley Fletcher, yeah, so what he used to be able to do was he'd be able to get everything that he needed from the prison officers, but at the same time have relationships with some of the most dangerous people in the prison and not be seen as a threat. Yeah, and that was me. Yeah, and I call that a transferable skill. So I kind of do that today. Yeah, I transfer from the prison cell to Westminster. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is I'm really trying to get the lived experience voice there. Yeah. So and this kind of comes from my professional career. So when I turned my life around, I worked in local authority and I was overseeing staff teams of 40. Nobody knew about my past, only my senior managers because of the DBS process. But when I was managing all of these staff teams, yeah, I used to listen to my staff and they'd be moaning at me about clients, yeah, and they'd be going and they'd be telling me all this stuff. And then I used to listen to them and I think, do you know what? You're not wrong, but you're also not right. Yeah. Okay. And then what I'd do is I'd listen to the clients because they'd be making complaints and moaning around. I'd be listening to them and I'd go, you know, you're not wrong, but you're not right. Yeah. And the thing is neither were hearing each other. But because I kind of had that overview, which they didn't truly understand, because they didn't know where I came from, I could kind of join the dots together. And I believe at the moment is the reason why the criminal justice is failing is because they don't have a lived experience voice at the highest table. Yeah. And I plan to be that voice. Yeah. So I plan to be that person that can be when they're looking at long-term legislation, strategy, process systems, everything related to it, is I want to be involved within that so that I can actually try to guide a system that's fit for purpose.
I think you've got a whole huge point there, and actually obviously the women leading side of things from my point of view is that the problem is there's not enough women at the table to be talking about issues that really affect women. So it's the same principle, isn't it? It's like actually there needs to be more steering committees with people that have been there and experienced this. And instead of people that have just been to expensive schools, or not even necessarily expensive schools, but had no experience whatsoever of a system, that is it for sure. The biggest problem, isn't it? The wrong people are making the big decisions.
And I'm hopeful actually, because even when you're talking about that women in leadership, yeah. So if I just so at the moment you've got Jo Farah, yeah, that's a woman, that's the new CEO of Her Majesty's Prison and Probation Service. You've got Lucy Fraser, who's the new prison minister, that's a woman, and then the person that's overseeing the whole transformation of the probation service is also a woman, Pia. Okay, so you've got 3 women there in very, very kind of powerful places, and Pia, she's probably my biggest gift in relation to getting me to where I need to be, So Pia, if anybody wants to kind of have a look into it, and you can have a look into it, is HMP Liverpool had a massively damning report. Yeah, it was not fit for human consumption, of human habitations. It was absolutely unbelievable. And she went in there and she completely transformed that prison within an 18-month period. The woman she's just a force to be reckoned with. But she got me up to the prison a couple of times to do some stuff. One was about doing stuff with staff and residents. Another one was about trying to bring the employers into the prison, and then for me to be able to show employers about, because I call it locked up potential, about the potential within prison that could actually support their businesses to thrive, and then also give people opportunities. So Pia is she's now very much engaged in wanting to find a way to get me at them tables, so that I can have more influence in them areas. So yeah, so thank God for the women.
I rest my case. Is it a coincidence there are women that are making a huge impact and difference? The thing is that women approach leadership differently, but they haven't been trained the same. So I do think men lead the way they've been trained. And obviously that's the problem. It's not that they're men, it's just that their training, like your training was as doing what you did as the training for most male leaders is what they've been taught how to do, and their role models were the authoritative type that just, you create a system, you create the rules. For me, rules are meant to be broken. Rules aren't we're not designed to live by rules. We're animals. We're designed to live to survive. So I think women tend to just come at leadership differently, and I'm thrilled that these are women that have been slightly on my radar, but I'm going to put them more on my radar, and hopefully maybe one of them or all of them will write in my next book, because we need more women role models, because that is actually a big lacking issue. As are obviously, you know, people like you, Gethin, because obviously, let's bring it back to now, because amazingly over lockdown, you've been interviewing all these people that you have something in common with.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you said actually it looks like you're creating a new Oceans 14.
Yeah. I've had more requests. I'm hoping to make this into something a lot bigger as well. So yeah, it was. So I was with lockdown. I was put into a really difficult situation. Because lots of other people that do sort of like speaking, training and coaching, they quickly went online and done stuff online. You know, there's no technology in prison. Yeah, there's no technology. It's just not acceptable. It's not accessible. So I had to kind of really try to find a way of how it was that I could break back into prison. Yeah, so it took me years to break out, and then I'm trying to find a way to break in. But they have got like a TV channel which is called Way Out TV, and they're in about 50 prisons. And I had some conversations with them, and they asked me just to do some short little 3-minute videos, which were survival guides on how people could survive in prison during lockdown. Because if we thought we had it tough out here, in prison they were locked up for 23 to 23 and a half hours a day, and within that 30 minutes to an hour, yeah, they had to have a shower, yeah, they had to make telephone calls, and also go out and get some exercise and fresh air. Okay, and everything rehabilitative just ended, you know, and so yeah, so I was doing these little things with Way Out TV, and then I was kind of told then about, like, you know, so I thought, oh, actually there maybe there's something else I could do. So I thought I'll come up with an idea of I was going to do some videos which is called An Interview With. And I wanted to interview lots and lots of different people who've got stories like mine. So I interviewed people that are IPPs, which is in prison for public protection. Then I also had lifers. I had people that were in for bank robbery, organised crime, you know, first-time offenders, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, gang members, the whole kind of cohort of what's within the prison system. But then what I did was I talked very much about what their experience of prison was like, what life was like before prison, so the people who are watching it can connect with it. And then I started to ask them about where the change process come from, who were some of the people they engaged with during the prison system, and also when they came out, and then talked about what they're doing now, you know. And these people, they've set up charities, CIC, social enterprises, they got businesses, you know, they're working in children's social care, adult social care, substance misuse services, you know, they're doing phenomenal work. And it was really just to kind of give people like a spark. So I'll say I'm a bit like a spark plug, spark people into life and think, actually, there is a life after prison, you know, and what is it that I can do to start to make some changes? So yeah, so I went and done a crowdfunding. Yeah, so people said to me, like, trust in your network, Gethin, go, you know, put it out to your network. And literally within 28 days, I'd raised £16,000 through crowdfunding, by people believe in me, what I do, so that I could create and develop this project. Just blown away, really.
Fantastic.
Blown away.
And they're DVDs, aren't they, going into all the prisons for them to watch and engage with? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. There's so much potential there. There really is of something way bigger than just, you know, that recording.
Yeah, and I just believe this is like a first step, because it will kind of build, you know, because there's DVDs, but there's also MP4. So some prisons are a little bit further ahead than others. But there's 83,000 people in the prison system at the moment. And this has the ability to reach all 83,000 people, because it goes direct into their cell on their televisions, you know, whilst they're set there on their own. When I go into prisons, as I do at the moment, you know, I try to advertise it just through posters and everything like that, you know, so you don't always get the numbers there you kind of want. So what I'm hoping is this will get more people engaged, so that hopefully in the future, you know, there'll be lots more videos, but I'll be able to kind of grow a bit of an army of people, yeah, because, you know, it's not all about me. You know, I also believe that a true leader creates leaders, you know, they create a platform for other people to lead, you know, and yeah, so that's what I want to do. I want to create a platform, have lots of other people that, you know, understand the different parts of the country, you know, because it's different in the south to as it is in London, to what it is in the Midlands, to what it is in the northeast, you know, and get them people from them areas to go into them prisons so they can really connect with those people there. But also as well, because they're from them areas, they truly understand all of the support that's available and the smaller little charities and social enterprises that can support people's journeys.
Yeah, fantastic, amazing work, Gethin, absolutely brilliant. Well, I wish you very huge amount of success and luck with that. Well, you don't need luck because you're on a path and you're nailing it, which is exciting. Well done, and congratulations on your crowdfunding, which is just amazing. I think that's a really great. And look where it's going, isn't it? That one thing is leading into another to another to another.
Yeah.
Really exciting. So thank you for being part of my Silver Linings book as well.
No problem at all.
Really glad about that, because there is a slight funny story to finish off with, isn't there? Because obviously our mutual friend and my co-editor Mike Davis Marks, you've been in touch with him before, and he kindly said, oh yeah, be in the book, and you're like, yeah. And then obviously we had this little caveat in the book, in the writer's guide, sorry, that said, oh, if you've got a criminal record you can't be in the book. Which is really funny, which actually is nothing to do with it's everything and nothing to do with what you've done, but that sadly there was someone who said they didn't have a criminal record, and that they were published, and it was relevant to the topic of the book that was published, and it got very, very messy. But obviously it's not a definite, because I think I am happy to publish a book unlocking their potential, because all these people that you've been interviewing, I'm sure could easily write, if they haven't already, a chapter of a book that could go, if it was crowdfunded, into every single prison as a book that was, just sort of that thick. Would go to every prisoner to give them some reading that would hopefully, just spur them into sort of making different choices and believing they can do it too. Hey.
No, absolutely, and I think you could have remember the old sets of encyclopedias, because there's so many of me. It's people just don't hear them voices, and that's all to do, because I've got another. I'll just quickly say this as well. So I've got a real passion around as well about changing public perception on people in prisons, because at the moment, the reason why prisons aren't funded the way they should be is because of the public's perception, and they don't see the benefit in funding prisons, because all they ever read is the Daily Mail articles. If I'll give you one suggestion, please stop reading the Daily Mail and don't listen to everything that they put on the media. There's some amazing work going on, and people doing some fantastic stuff. Dig a little bit deeper and look for the success stories, because there's many out there, many of them.
And the prisons are full of potential. People like you.
Exactly.
Gethin Jones, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure, joy, as always. And I'm glad your story in the Silver Linings will be spread around as well to some good news. So thanks for joining me.
No problem. I'm going to ring me buzzer now, see if I can get out my padded cell.
Oh, I hope so. You have to ring me if you can't. Okay, well, this is Jo Corbin-Trott. This is the Amijo Show. Thank you so much for joining, and that's the end of the show. We'll be back soon.